Hello, everyone. Thank you, Oliver, for the introduction. So as you said, I am part of the Regional Resilience Assessment Program with Public Safety Canada, located in Ottawa, Ontario. And I'm going to go over our program, what kind of outputs we have, as well as the background. So we're just going to start out on the second slide. So to give an outline of the presentation, we'll be covering the background of our program, the benefits to owners and operators, such as yourselves in the transportation sector, the 3 different tools that we offer, some practical considerations if you are interested in having an assessment done, and then, like Oliver mentioned, we'll have time for some questions. So the Regional Resilience Assessment Program was established in Canada in 2011. Our program is Canadianized based off the Department of Homeland Security in the United States version. And the idea of this program is to help owners and operators of Canadian critical infrastructure both measure and improve their resilience. The Regional Resilience Assessment Program was adapted to have about 250 sites done here in Canada to make sure to use the proper information and tools to assess critical infrastructure. And the main objectives of our program are to help owners and operators identify dependencies and vulnerabilities, provide you with different ways to mitigate threats and improve your ability to respond, as well as enhance our own knowledge at public safety about critical infrastructure and different ways we can help combat different issues that you're dealing with. So some details about our program over the years. So on the left side, you'll see the breakdown of each province that we visit. So the way that our program works is we have our main team here at headquarters in Ottawa, and then we also have regional representatives across Canada in public safety offices. And the idea is we work with our regional colleagues to go out and do these assessments to create relationships at the regional level, as well as enhance our own knowledge of the region based off their own knowledge. So you can see from both BC all the way to Newfoundland, we've visited all 10 provinces as well as 1 territory. And within each province, it kind of breaks down how many we've done over the years, as well as which sector. So for example, in Saskatchewan, you can see that's the highest area that we've been able to visit. And the breakdown of the colors is on the bottom legend there. So we've been able to do energy and utilities, as well as transportation, manufacturing, government and event facilities, and so forth. And then on the top right, you can see over the years how we've grown. So we did start back in 2011, but assessments started between the 2012-2014 years, and we ramped up to almost complete about 75 last fiscal year. So our goal is to try and get out to each province 2 weeks per year, and during each week we do between 3 to 4 assessments with our regional colleagues. And then on the bottom, you can see a map of Canada and the breakdown of all the different areas in Canada that we've done our assessments. So you can see that there's a different breakdown in various areas throughout each province. So here are some details to know about our program. So as I've mentioned, we fall into the 10 different critical infrastructure sectors across Canada. So that includes energy and utilities, information and communication technologies, safety, food, government, finance, health, manufacturing, transportation, water, and then the 11th we call other, which mainly means event facilities. And within each of these 10 sectors, we also have various subsectors beneath that. So there's about 100 in total. Based on each sector, there are various subsectors that fall underneath it. So for example, under the transportation, we have ports, aviation facilities, rail transit, passenger, as well as under hospitals, we have hospitals. Under event facilities, we have arenas and convention centers. And the 3 main things to know about our program is that we are non-regulatory. So we cannot come out and force any of the options for consideration that we want to put forward for yourself. We're completely free of cost. We cover all of the travel costs for our assessors on our end. And we're completely confidential. We keep all of our information on an air-gapped network here at our headquarters in a locked room. We don't share it outside of our team except for aggregate data, such as each facility we go to gets a number which matches a province and a sector. And we don't share that outside of our own government facility. As well, we make sure that we have a non-disclosure agreement on both ends. So yourselves as owner-operators will sign off that the information belongs to you, as well as us on our end. Our manager will sign up for us to say that if you want the information destroyed or removed, you have that right. So now we're going to get into the 3 different tools that we offer currently with the Regional Resilience Assessment Program. So the first tool we're going to discuss is called the Critical Infrastructure Resilience Tool. So this is an on-site survey-based tool that goes through about a 1,500 variable question set. and it breaks down into 3 different areas. So the first area is the overview and planning section. So that has to do with your emergency plans, your business continuity, your natural hazards, your information sharing, how you have relationships with first responders. And we're going to go through different scenarios about what would happen if you lost certain services, how would you react, and how would you be affected, as well as discussing how these relationships with first responders can grow and how they've developed and how they can be improved. In the second section, we get into the security. So it has to do with your guns, your gates, your barriers, what kind of CCTV coverage you have, if you have a security force, as well as what kind of policies and procedures you have in place for your staff. And then the third section gets into your dependencies. So your natural gas, your water, your wastewater. How do you depend on these dependencies? What would happen if you lost them? How quickly you'd be affected? And if you have any backups in place. As well, we get into critical products. So if you were to lose these critical products, how would your facility be affected? What kind of supply chain relationships do you have in place? And the idea of this tool is a learning opportunity. So because we're non-regulatory, we see ourselves as a non-judgmental learning opportunity to come into your facility and kind of give a different lens. So give a third-party view without any restrictions on how you use the information. So we work with yourselves and owner-operators to answer these questions. We come in a team of 3, so usually 2 from our headquarters and 1 of our regional colleagues. And we usually break into 3 groups to try and talk to the subject matter experts at the facility in all of these areas. So once we've gone through this, we also like to do a site tour, and that's where we can kind of get a lot of our answers to our questions. We get to know how the facility works, and it's an opportunity to put words to a physical place. And then at the end of this, what we prepare in a 40 business day turnaround is 3 different products. So first, we're going to give you a final report. This is more of a high-level report. It's about 30 pages, and it's going to go over all of the different things that we discussed while we were on site. And we highly recommend that you share this as well with management, senior management, as it's a nice way for them to kind of get a good overview of how the tool went. So within this report, we give an overview of our methodology that we follow, as well as the process that we went through. Any questions usually that people have is answered within those sections. We discuss who was on site for us, who answered the questions that day of. We give a description of the facility, and we talk a bit about the background of how we got to the information. And then we go over something called significant assets and areas. So when we're on site, we'll discuss this with the owner-operators that are present. We're going to go through what are the most critical pieces that help your facility function. So we're not looking at your generators, your electricity. Those are covered in our dependency section. We're looking more at if you go to a hospital and you lost your emergency room, how would you be affected? Do you have any backups in place? What percentage of degradation of your business would be affected? And usually we identify between 1 to 6 of those, and we go through scenarios. We said if that entire area was to pretty much blow up, how would you react? What would happen? And it kind of gets people thinking of, we need to have more backups in place. We need to have stronger ways to mitigate against these possible opportunities of threats and how to be resilient. Then we get into your dependencies at a high level. We discuss what dependencies you rely on, how long it would take for you to be affected, and what percentage of business degradation you'd be experiencing. Then we get into what we call the commendable section. So this section is to highlight things that you're doing well and things that we encourage you to continue doing, or things that we don't regularly see in like facilities. So we're going to go through and say, we're really, impressed with all the CCTV coverage you have in your facility. It's rare that this type of facility would have so much coverage, things like that. We want to make sure to highlight things you do well. Then the final section is called the vulnerabilities and options for consideration. So that section is going to go through the various areas that we covered, what kind of vulnerabilities we identified based off our methodology, and what kind of options for consideration that we want to offer you to try and put into your facility. Again, you're not regulated to put any of these in, but they're recommendations we have on our end. And when we give you these options for consideration, we do try to balance the kind of facility you're at. So we're not going to try and expect a hospital to be as strong as an embassy, for example. We want to make sure that you're compared to other like facilities and how your facility should be prepared. We like to target, as we say, the low-hanging fruit. So it could be something simple as you don't lock the back door at night. We recommend you lock that back door, things like that. We as well can get into more detailed areas and a lot more high level if that's what the client is looking for. So that is the report that you'd receive. The other 2 things that you would get out of the Critical Infrastructure Resilience tool are 2 Excel dashboards. So they're called the Protective Measures Index and the Resilience Measurements Index. So the idea with these dashboards is you can go through them. They're quite comprehensive, and they go through all of the questions that we went over with ourselves as the assessors and yourselves as the owner-operators. And you're going to get 2 different scores. So the protective measures index is going to give you scores on how you did for your protective posture. So it's usually the entire security section. What kind of safeguards do you have in place? And you can go through each section and see how you scored, and you can actually use this tool and create scenarios. So for example, you may see, okay, right now only 25% of our facility is covered by CCTV coverage. That gives us a score of 50 for our protective measures index. If we were to add and get up to 100% of our CCTV coverage, how would that affect our score? Oh, that brings us up to about 80%. That's a worthwhile investment for us to put money into more CCTV coverage to bring up a protective measures score. So you can actually play with these dashboards. We leave them with you to use, and you can create different scenarios and look at it from a fiscal point of view of what you could change to bring up your scores. And it's the same for the resilience measurement index, but it covers the first and last section. So your emergency management, business continuity, as well as your dependencies. So the second tool is called the Critical Infrastructure Multimedia tool. So this is what we call a Google Street View of your facility. So you're going to provide us in advance with floor plans of your facility. Usually emergency plans work well for this tool. And we're going to walk through the facility with one of the owner-operators who can escort us. And we're going to take 360-degree photos of the critical areas of the facility, entrances and exits, and we try to cover as much of the facility as possible. And these photos take about 60 to 80 yards length, and it's kind of to give you, as I said, a Google Street View of your facility. So if you were to be in a situation such as an active shooter or something like that, you're able to kind of put yourself in the facility and see what it looks like and how to handle it. So we do recommend, after we've done this product, that you share it with first responders. That way, if there is an incident, they do have a physical walkthrough of your facility. They can see your floor plans. They can see pictures of where everything is and what it looks like inside if they're unable to get inside. It's also common that people use this tool for exercises. If they do exercises at their facility, they can kind of use it as a proactive tool. So this tool actually came out of the Columbine shootings in the U.S. When first responders were responding to the attacks. They were trying to use the floor plans they were given, and they realized that they should do a more comprehensive tool to help them in advance of such things happening. So this tool is called the Canadian Cyber Resiliency Review. So this is as well, an on-site survey-based assessment that is led by one of our lead cyber assessors here at Public Safety. And he's going to go through about 300 questions that have to do with your cyber protection and security. So his is also based off of methodology. And he's going to go through various areas of cyber and IT security based off the NIST and standards. So that's the National Institute Standards of Technology. And based off all the answers that you provide, you can either answer yes, no, or incomplete. And if you answer no or incomplete to any of the questions, it's going to automatically generate an option for consideration based off the standards that NIST has prepared. And from this tool, you're going to get a comprehensive final report that's going to provide you with the scores, peer comparisons, key standards, as well as some options for consideration of what you can improve. And then there's something called the CEO Summary Report. And the idea with that report is more of a high level, what you did really well, what you didn't do as well in, and how you can improve. And so that is, again, recommended to give up to the senior management, people who weren't able to be at the table on the day of, so they can kind of get an overview of how everything went. So both the Critical Infrastructure Resilience Tool and the Canadian Cyber Resiliency Review will give you comparative scores to other like subsectors that you will be rated against. So we are not trying to rate hospitals against embassies. We're making sure to do subsectors against subsectors. So for example, airports are targeted against airports. And the data that we have is U.S. at this time, as we haven't done enough Canadian to have our own data, except for 5 different sectors that we're able to have our own Canadian comparative data. But we also provide you with the U.S. data, as they've done almost 100 to 300 in each different subsector. So for planning and practical considerations, if you yourselves are interested or if you'd like to pass on the information, to do all 3 tools, it'll take about 3 full days for one facility. So the Critical Infrastructure Resilience Tool will provide about 3 different people will be required. So we'll need someone from the security section, whether it be a manager. We'll need someone in the facilities, so someone who knows the water, wastewater, natural gas, etc., as well as someone in the emergency management field, so they can answer our questions on the overview and planning section. We also need someone from IT, as we do have IT as a dependency, and there's some questions in that area. And it can take about half a day to a full day to do the questions with the site tour. It depends on the speed we go through the questions as well as who's available. For the critical infrastructure multimedia tool, it varies. It can take about a full day to half a day. We do need one person to take us throughout the facility. And it can be done on off business hours. So some facilities are operational during the day, like a city hall, but they close at 5. So from 5 to 10 o'clock at night, we can do our photos during then, so we don't get people in the photos. But it's very dependent on the facility itself. And then the Canadian Cyber Resiliency Review. So that requires quite a few more people, depending on how your organization is broken up. So there'll be required domain managers from all the different areas. Such as IT, information management, HR is required for a small section, and that's about a full 8-hour day. So we do have an agenda that we usually follow, and it kind of details the way the day will go and who we'll need in place, as well as some other documentation we have that's helpful for planning for these assessments. So the only thing that we ask for in return after we finish these assessments is that you answer 3 short surveys. So the first survey is about our performance as the assessment team, how we did on the day, how it could be improved, how the process went in your opinion. The second is the final report. So once you've received all the data back and the outputs, you can let us know how you thought it was, if it was easy to understand, how we could improve it in the future. And then we have a 1-year follow-up. So about 1 year after the final presentation, we'll follow up with you to see how did we do as assessors, how did the program do, how did our products do, if you put any of the things in place, if you've spent any money, anything that we can get for feedback. We really do appreciate the answers to these surveys. So here's just some participant feedback we've gotten from these surveys. So about 90% of participants believe that the options that we provided were actionable solutions. So as I mentioned, we try to go for the low-hanging fruit, realistic things that could be put in place for your facility. All participants took some form of action at a rate of about 31% of options implemented. So we put out, on average, 30 options for consideration per report. So we look at it about 10 out of 30 of those are implemented at each facility. And then finally, participants invested on average about $320,000 to their facilities as a result of this report's influence. So again, that varies on facilities. Some are smaller, don't have the kind of budget to invest into these things. Others are big corporations that are able to invest. So we're hoping that we can kind of meet in the middle and offer things that don't cost a lot of money, as well as recommend things that may cost some money. And then on the bottom, you can see some testimonies from past participants who were part of the program. And so lastly, just to cover off, the benefits to yourselves as owner-operators are as follows. We hope that you get better risk management. So like I've mentioned, we're coming in, we're giving you a different view. We're hoping that you learn something from our assessment that you can put towards your facility. We are using a methodology. These are, defense scientists have built this methodology based on what they've learned. So we really hope that what we recommend is useful for you. We hope that it helps you make informed investment decisions. So that's what the dashboards are really strong for. You can kind of see what kind of investments could give you the best bang for your buck and where you can put those kind of things forward. You can establish some government relationships. So with ourselves as the federal government, we're going to recommend other information sharing partners or other things you can join, as well as we hope you share with first responders and kind of create that relationship there to give them the critical infrastructure multimedia tool. And finally, improve your cybersecurity awareness. So both from the critical infrastructure resilience tool as well as the Canadian Cyber Resilience Review, you will get a good comprehensive overview of your cybersecurity and how to enhance and improve it. So that's pretty much the quick 30-minute overview of our program. So thank you so much for listening, and any questions, please let me know.